Thanks for the warm welcome. Welcome everybody, good morning. This is a rather unusual audience for me, I must say. I'm still very happy to share a bit of our story, a bit of our sort of history and a bit of what we've gone through. And quite interestingly, some things at the beginning of the presentation will sound familiar to what Frank just said, because we've experienced the exact same thing. When we started thinking about this business, and it was based on a deregulation here in Germany, so there was no bus services allowed between cities, and government talked about changing this, people thought we were crazy. And not only people, but our friends, family, back then girlfriends, now wives, everybody said we're crazy. You're not going to found a bus company. And we told them, well, we're not really, and we'll prove you wrong. This is who we are today. So we're in over 40 countries. We're not only the European market leaders, but globally the biggest company who does long-distance intercity travel on the ground, to be fair. So we're doing buses and trains, operate a larger train network also in Germany. You can travel to over 3,000 destinations in our network. It's over the 60 million passengers is outdated, and I'll show you a bit more of our numbers later. And we work with partners too. So we operate our business in a very different way to what the industry has operated historically. So we work with over 1,000 partners that would run and operate the buses and trains for us. And we're very much focused on the platform and the digital side of things and the brand side. And this is how we've ultimately managed to build our business. This is what we had at the beginning. And that was the point where people said we're crazy. So just a very simple idea. We're going to use buses to connect cities. I heard this before. And we've had a few PowerPoint slides, and this is what we started to pitch investors to. And at the beginning, people were very skeptical on what this was going to be. And this was our first office. So this is where not the idea was born, but we kind of brought the idea to life. And you can see on the wall that we weren't super digital back then. We printed out market data to have an analysis on what the first lines should be and how network should look like. And our big investment was this printer in the corner, 400 euros. Made a business case if it would make sense to have an own printer or print in copy shops to pitch to bus partners to join us. So this was our humble starts in 2012 in an entrepreneurship center in Munich. And this was our first real bus. Just as you mentioned that the first transaction was kind of staged. This was a Photoshop picture. So we went to one of our bus partners and told him, look, we need a picture of a bus, we need some PR. So he got us this bus. And if you look closely, you can see that we're looking straight into the sun, so it's not a great shot. And we had to Photoshop it, and the industry immediately knew this is not a long-distance bus. This is not comfortable if you sit there on 2+ hours, and everybody was laughing at us again. But still, we got some PR, and kind of it still worked for us. And this is how it felt at the very beginning. So we launched in early 2013. We were up against big competitors, Deutsche Bahn, the State Rail guys. Deutsche Post was there. The German Automotive Club even played some weird role in the market. UK transportation companies came over, so it was massive competition. And again, we felt like the small guys, the startup, and nobody thought we would be able to survive in this market. But what made us survive was that we really thought very differently about this industry, about the product, about how we build this business, how we serve our customers, how we build technology around it. And this was what really differentiated us. And we tried to use our advantage of outsiders to this industry, a fresh perspective, a very new approach, that we didn't need to own the buses. Everybody else was working in an integrated model, buying buses, employing drivers, managing all the operations. We ultimately now end up with a distributed production with over 1,000 outlets across all our geographies. That makes it very, very efficient to operate our network. At the same time, strong focus on building technology from the ground up, building a new brand, very new sort of marketing and customer acquisition around it, and really innovate around all the details. How do you even name the drivers? How do they do their job? How do we manage their daily routines and operations? And also, how do we build our network? It was a lot of trial and error at the beginning, but always very much built on data and analytics. And this is really the sum up of what we've managed to achieve against the big players. We were much faster in decision making. Just to give you an example, Deutsche Post and ADAC joined forces to build a competitor. They spent more money on consulting companies before they launched that we needed to build a network of 50 buses on the street. So they took much more time. we just took the risk of, hey, let's get started with whatever license we get in the early days, and let's just get out there and get our network on the ground. We certainly had no technology legacy, super helpful if you can build this from ground up. And this is certainly a big sort of hurdle if you're an established company to innovate around technology. And in the end also, we managed to attract the stronger teams because people found our story exciting, they found the opportunity exciting, and I think we managed to build a strong vision and narrative around that to really get the best people on board. And this is how our sort of weekly revenue numbers looked since launch. So quite successful. So we've grown a lot over the years, and it's been quite a journey. You can see seasonality in our business, it's pretty strong. The strongest week is the first week of January. The weakest week is the second week of January. So very challenging also in terms of how you manage fluctuation of supply and demand. And then in contrast to your industry, where digital was boosted through COVID, this is what happened to us. So COVID for us was an absolute nightmare in the industry. And you can tell from where this graph is going. We literally made 0 revenues for a period of a few weeks in early 2020. So we were going from growing 50% versus the previous year in January, February 2020 to basically 0 revenue in a few days. And this was scary. It was scary as hell, and we didn't know if we would actually survive as a company, if Flix was going to be there next month, next year. And this is kind of what, again, sort of has taught us a lot of lessons, and I'll share a few of those with you on how do you manage that, how do you sort of navigate through it, and how do you react to such a situation. So this was the impact on our industry, really. I still remember receiving WhatsApp messages from our Italian MD sending me empty shelves in supermarkets in Italy because I didn't take it serious at the beginning, just like everybody else, and thought this was going to be over in a few weeks. Turns out it's not. But the impact was just massive on our industry. People obviously stopped traveling completely, so there was no demand out there. We had to also tell our partners, you need to stop buses, you need to basically send your drivers into short-time work or whatever, and just try to get costs and cash burn down, and this is really dramatic. And this put a lot of uncertainty on all our team. So for us, it was super key to build trust into our teams, to keep credibility, that people would still trust whatever we were telling them was actually our open opinion, our open knowledge, and our clear direction on what we were going to do. So we really needed to care about our people, and I think this is one of the key lessons, that our team has been the crucial part that allowed us ultimately to manage through this crisis, and without them, we would have never made it through. Just like I said, people didn't take it serious at the beginning, so we needed to create a super strong sense of urgency. This is about life and death, literally. Because again, people were like, why are you sending us into short-time work? Why are we reacting so drastically? They didn't take it serious. So we need to create that sense of urgency to make sure everybody understands how important it is what we're actually doing right now. And then again, and this comes back to how we work as a company, we needed to get all the data into one room, decision makers into one room, and make sure we're basing our decisions on a strong fact-based situation. And this helped us massively to not only ramp down the network very fast, but also ramp back up in the time when demand was coming back, when curfews were lifted, when restrictions were easing across the countries. And this was going super fast into both directions. So governments decided from one day to another, hey, you can travel again. And then we've had a situation where Hungarian government decided on a Sunday evening that on Monday morning they're going to shut the borders. You can imagine what this does to your cross-border trips to Hungary. So all of this, we got into one room, got all the right people, did all the analytics to make sure that we're still matching supply and demand in a way that we get buses out there, get work for our partners, still make some money, create some cash flow. So this was super critical for us. And then coming back to also why people are joining us, this helped us to keep people on board. We needed to build a very strong and persuasive narrative on what does this crisis do to us? And we kept telling them, look, everybody's suffering in the industry. We're going to ultimately get out stronger because we are faster in reacting, smarter on decision making, more analytical in taking the right decisions, and ultimately matching supply and demand better than anybody else. And this will help us to ultimately be winners out of this situation and winning market share, and in the end be stronger as a company. At the beginning we believed it, but we needed to make sure that everybody believes it, and this was the complicated part. So we need to come from sense of urgency, everybody's difficult and we need to take harsh measures, to giving optimism to the team at the right time. And this was probably the most difficult point. How do we get them behind now, okay, we need to cut costs, let people go, etc. By the way, we, for example, in the US, there's no schemes like short-time work. We had to let go 75% of our team. So this was drastic. And this was a point where we had to hit the right time to give optimism to the team that is ultimately worth staying on board and continuing to fight through this crisis with us. And this is where also this the title of this presentation is coming from. We need to tell them now it's time to go from defense to offense. And this is when we had the first indications from the market that things are going somewhat back to normal. People start traveling again. We've had traffic indications. We've had multiple data points from the analytics that we were using. That's actually now time to go back into offense and to win market share, to be more aggressive around marketing, expand the network, put more supply out there because we knew that demand was coming. And this was the tagline that we used also internally. That's a slide that we've used in our all-hands meetings. And we needed to demonstrate progress on the way. So really prove that we're making progress and it's actually working. And this is also a slide that we used internally. Very simple color coding of where we're losing money, where is it kind of okay, and where we're actually making some money from the network. And this is the development that we showed to the team along the way to really make sure, again, fact-based, it's the right decision, it's working what we're doing, we're moving into the right direction, and our decisions and overall direction is the right one. And then at some point, again, people thought we're crazy when we brought up the idea. We felt it's time to take really bold moves. And we talked to our internal team, our board, our investors, our shareholders. This is such a unique situation in our industry. It's once in a lifetime. That's hopefully, in that way, never going to happen again. But we need to leverage to the maximum to what we can do as a company. So let's go out and be very aggressive in consolidating markets. Let's go and buy Greyhound. And people were like, you kidding me? And this was at a point where the pandemic was in full swing. We still hadn't certainty around where this is going to go, etc. But I think this is the moments where it's really decisive on where you go as a company. And we took, fortunately, and with a lot of resistance from, again, everybody on all sides, took that step and ended up buying Greyhound in a deal that was an absolute milestone for us. We've always had the clear ambition to be not only in Europe the market leaders, but also in the US, be the clear number one. Certainly this was a massive acceleration for us. So we bought a company that's over 100 years old, very different business model, completely integrated. They had thousands of people on the operation side, drivers, maintenance, an own maintenance plant in South Texas somewhere. I've never seen that one, but still it's there. 1,500 buses in the fleet. They were doing over 700 million in revenues, significantly less through the pandemic and also burning money. But we still felt this is so strategic to us. There's so many synergies between our business and theirs. And just the step of us taking them to the digital age is so massive, and that's what we've seen. We've managed to completely shift their business onto our platform about half a year ago. That was the final step in the integration. So now we're cross-selling all our inventory from one system, managing the entire Greyhound network out of our technology, software, and optimization tools, and it's been a massive step forward. And for us as a company, a huge milestone on our way to really build the undisputed global market leader. And that's the booking situation now. As you can see, we went through the crisis and pretty much continued on our growth path back on where we were coming from and really are seeing record bookings right now. So very happy that this slide is looking like it is today. But at the point where you see the gray coronavirus, it wasn't clear at all. But I think ultimately, I said, with super strong team, committed team behind it, clear vision, and fact-based and analytical decision-making. This is what got us there. So very happy to continue our journey in green buses and green trains across the world. And we continue to make the world green. And I said, very happy to be here. And I hope this has given you a bit of insight into how fresh thinking can disrupt an entire industry. Thanks a lot.
Are there any questions? I mean, I think that's been an incredible journey. I know it's very far away from the metals and mining industry. But maybe let me ask you a question. I mean, you said like the key things that were making you successful were on the one side data analytics. So you had all the data always readily available, moving fast, a strong team, and sometimes taking risks or being bold. Let me ask you the question another way. Like when you said like especially analyzing data, I think you probably built up some kind of data repository, everything right with it from the start, and you do not rely on things like email, etc. anymore. We've both worked in the metals and mining industry. What was your experience there?
I mean, let me give you an example from our industry, and then maybe come back to metals and mining. When we looked at Greyhound in the M&A discussions and due diligence work, we looked at how are they building their network. And they effectively have two people who know the entire network inside out in their heads. If you're lucky, they're using Excel, but effectively they have it in their heads and it's printed out or it's in Excel. We built our own software to actually be able to manage this entire complexity of all these connections, all these overlapping lines, all these operating partners, schedules, optimization, etc. So it was just incredible for us to see to manage such a complicated network with 2.5 people and a spreadsheet. It's just incredible. And the same thing is true for my experience back then. I mean, we've been sitting in this room at this mining company looking at ocean freight. First, it was very difficult to get the right data. Then you didn't have an idea or real understanding what's the quality of that data. Could you actually rely on it? And then you had to somehow make it work. And I know we've been building a massive Excel model back then to try to predict future freight rates and stuff. Actually, in hindsight, I'm not sure if we were right. I'm sure it was due to the quality of the data, but this is really, really difficult. And to also get it validated with experts, like everybody had a different understanding, etc. So this is really, really complicated. And I think that's what we've tried to do very early on to make sure that first, everybody has a clear understanding at what does that KPI actually mean? What's the definition of a KPI? Where does the data come from? And then how do we pool it all into one pool, one data pool that everybody draws from and everybody uses the same pool of data. So there's one single source of truth. And I think this is absolutely key. And in our industry, and this is what we keep telling also and educating investors around, it's incredible how little data has been used historically. It's just insane. I mean, this guy from Greyhound knew that if we're changing the schedule by 5 minutes, there's a bus coming from another place and you would miss the interconnection stuff. It's just insane to do this not through technology. At the same time, our business is 10 times more complicated than airline business. We're doing A to B, but we're doing A to F and everything that happens in between. And this is just, and it took years also for our internal investors to realize how strong and powerful technology, data, and the software tools that we built are. And this is what made us so competitive and ultimately so disruptive to our industry, because we were driving efficiency at every single stage of the value chain by just taking smarter decisions. And I think this is something that I've at least experienced in metals and mining too, where this is 15 years ago, but there was so little transparency around what's actually happening there and how can you optimize it and how do you manage it, that I think this is a huge, huge opportunity.
There's another question.
Is it working?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, Peter Faber from Bentler, procurement manager, actually. So I have a question to you, what's coming from my discipline. Do you already leverage hardware as well, like with the OEMs of the bus companies? I mean, there's a lot of assets in the way from your partners as well as with Greyhound, with the Greyhound side. So at which moment, so do you, and when was the right moment to do it?
To use the hardware from the OEMs?
No, just my point is really to make contracts with the manufacturers, to give the incentives to the partners, to give them something on the cost side, right?
Yeah. Relatively early on, so our typical partner would have 20 to 50 buses in his fleet already and would run 10 to 20, maybe 30% of his fleet for us. So he would do, I don't know, 10, 15, maybe 20 buses. That's our typical partner. We're running thousands of buses across our network. So our buying power towards the OEMs is much stronger. So we've relatively early started to build frame contracts to tell them, look, this is the exact bus that we need. That's the specs. This is how you should build it. The color of the seats, the curtains, everything. We've designed and defined it. And then told our partners, look, you go to Daimler, MAN, whoever, you can just buy from these frame contracts at very good terms, much better terms than they would get individually. So we've been doing this along the way. Same on fuel, same on tires, same on multiple things that we need. Again, we're trying to help our partners on the one hand for their Flix business, but also for the rest of their business that they can get access to better rates, certainly. And again, in our industry, and maybe that's comparable, a bus is not like a car. It's not fully automated production. So just by telling the OEMs, look, you can build 200, 300, 400 of those in the next year, and this is going to be your customers, is giving massive scale and production cost advantage. So we've been trying to do this all along. Yeah. Big lever for us on the operation side.
Leonardo Silvestre from CBMM, a Niobium company. Thank you very much. Very inspiring presentation. I just downloaded the app here, and the app is amazing as well. So it's working quite well. I checked it here and have prices, options to travel. Excellent.
It's good to hear that it's working, huh?
Yeah, indeed. No, and a lot of users evaluating well. So we talked in the beginning of this presentation, we heard about energy transition. How is this playing a role in your business? What's how you see the future on your business when we talk about decarbonization and energy transition?
Yeah. I mean, first, I think we did not make the mistake of many others to try to be developers of hardware technology ourselves. Like ride-hailing companies have tried to build autonomous vehicles and stuff, so we didn't do that. But we're very much trying to push the OEMs towards a lower carbon footprint and production. And we continue to pilot test around alternative fuels, electric buses, et cetera, et cetera. So we do that. And also to push the European OEMs, we've actually had 2 Chinese OEMs be the first to do battery-powered buses across Europe with us. So we continue to do that. I think the path is pretty clear that our fleet is going to be decarbonized over the next years. I can't give an exact date, but it will happen. And we will certainly be at the forefront. The good thing for us is that we're modernizing our fleets relatively quickly because we're using them so much. We would usually turn them around in 3 to 4 years. So to turn an entire fleet from regular combustion engine to electric is going to be a relatively quick exercise once the technology is available. But still, it needs to be economic for us. So of course, we need to look at ultimately total cost of ownership of the vehicle. Does it work for us? Does it make sense? Where does it make sense? Is range enough? And range still for us is the key problem at this point. Because usually the buses would run 700, even up to 1,000 kilometers per day, and ranges are just not there. But it will happen. And I said we continue to push the OEMs to get there, try to build strategic partnerships with not only OEMs, but also first-tier suppliers around hydrogen solutions, battery, alternative fuels, etc., just to also demonstrate what's possible on the technology side and really speed up this development. But it is happening. It will happen. And we're committed to also deliver ultimately a carbon neutral way to travel also on our buses. On the trains, we're already using only renewable energy. And this is, maybe as we're talking about green steel later, I think, traveling on a bus is by far the most environmentally friendly thing that you can do for your carbon footprint on a emission per passenger kilometer basis. We're beating, I mean, flights is obvious, but cars and also usually, and trains, if you look at the German energy mix, unfortunately, we're even beating trains significantly. So.
Fabian Krüger from Winterberg. We are an investment company. I have a very simple question. Could you indicate roughly the numbers on that one chart where you showed your revenues. So I'd like to know the levels. I've been trying to sort of make my own mind, but I thought I'd better ask.
I mean, our last year revenues is somewhat public. Last year we've done 1.5 billion, and we continue to grow at 25–30%. So this year is going to be significantly bigger than last year.
And what was the revenue before it fell to 0?
2019 we were at almost 1 billion. In 2020, I mean, you saw the numbers. I think we ended up around 400. The plan was 1.5 already in 2020. So we've lost 2/3 of our business through the pandemic in that year, and 21 didn't look much better.
Okay, thanks.
Good. See, there are no more
Cool.
questions. But anyway, Jochen, thanks a lot for this inspiring presentation.
And enjoy the rest of the conference.
I do have a book for you. It's called The World for Sale. It's actually about resources and the role of traders in actually trading all those resources. It's from Jack Farchi, one of the presenters actually tomorrow. Once again, thank you very
cool.
much.
Thanks a lot.
I think we can learn a lot from what you've implemented, and I hope also the audience can take away quite a lot of learning for themselves.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Have fun.
Yeah.